Welcome to the deep dive. We are diving deep, really deep, into the life of, well, a fascinating guy, Hans Oster.
Yeah, a
Oh.
fascinating and really complex figure.
So he was this high-ranking German military intelligence officer,
During World War II.
right, during World War II. And he ends up, as a pivotal figure in the resistance against Hitler.
It's hard to overstate his role there.
Yeah, and it's like a twisty journey, right? We had this great historical account you provided.
The detailed timeline, really.
Exactly. And it shows like his initial almost, I don't know, a belief, would you say, in the Nazi vision.
Belief, yes. Support, definitely in the early days.
Support, and then all the way to, well, the end, which is execution for his part in all these anti-Hitler plots.
Really a stark transformation.
So what we're aiming for in this deep dive is to truly understand, like, what drove him, what were his motivations.
Forces that shaped his choices, yeah.
And also, the weight of his actions. Like, what did they mean in the bigger picture of the German resistance?
The impact, the
Yeah.
significance, yeah.
Right, because, it's easy to think of these, like, strong regimes as, I don't know, like a single block, like everyone thinks the same.
Monolithic, yeah. And that's where Oster's story really challenges that.
Oh, yeah.
It reveals the struggles, the dissent, the risks people took, even from within.
It makes you wonder, like, the courage it takes to work against a system that seems so powerful.
Absolute.
So Hans Oster, he's like a window into those moral battles that were fought, in the shadow of Nazism.
Right in the heart of it.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Born in Dresden, 1887.
Hans Paul Oster, yep. And his background is important here. Protestant family, his father was a pastor.
Interesting.
So even though he ended up in the military, maybe that early exposure to a strong moral framework played a role later on.
Maybe, yeah, subtle influence.
He joins the artillery in 1907, starts his military career.
So the military is his path.
Yeah.
Then in 1912, he marries Gertrude Knoop.
And they have 3 children together.
And of course, then World War I comes along.
And Oster serves on the Western Front.
Right in the thick of it.
He's also in the German General Staff, and by 1916, he reaches the rank of Hauptmann.
Hauptmann, that's like
Captain, in English terms.
captain, okay. So World War I ends in 1918, and then comes the Treaty of Versailles in 1919.
Huge impact on Germany, and on Oster personally, for sure.
It really did. Like, on so many Germans, it was this
Humiliating defeat, really.
Yeah, they had to, like, take all the blame for the war, these massive reparations payments, their economy's in shambles.
And they lost territories, all their overseas colonies.
So pride's shattered, and then, the military restrictions, they were super tight.
The army's limited to 100,000 personnel. No submarines, no Air Force.
And no conscription. So for a guy like Oster, a career military man, I mean.
Devastating, right. It's like taking away his identity almost.
Totally, yeah. But he keeps serving, even in this reduced army.
4,000 officers, that's all they had left. He gets promoted to major in 1929.
Okay, he's moving up.
But then, 1932, kind of a curveball.
What happened?
He has to resign from the army.
Oh, right, because of that affair.
A scandal forced him out.
It's interesting, though, right? Because this, like, setback, it happens before the Nazis even come to power.
Right, it's a separate thing.
Uh-huh.
And then, January 1933, Hitler becomes chancellor.
And Oster, he's actually among those who support it initially.
He's not alone. A lot of people thought Hitler would, make Germany great again.
Yeah, it was a time when people were hurting, looking for answers. They wanted that national revival.
That promise of strength resonated with many.
So after the Nazis take power, Oster joins the Abwehr.
The German Military Intelligence Service.
A decision that, looking back, had huge implications.
Absolutely. It set him on a very specific path.
But the Nazis, they start doing things, and it chips away at that initial support.
The actions don't match the rhetoric.
Right, like the democracy's gone, it's a one-party state, total control.
Totalitarian state. And they're brutal towards their opponents. Communists, socialists, thrown into concentration camps.
Dachau, one of the first, opened really early, March 1933.
Designed to terrorize, to silence anyone who disagreed.
And it wasn't just political people, right? They went after culture, too, those book burnings in May 1933.
Erasing anything they considered un-German.
Jewish authors, Marxists, liberal, all gone.
And then the conflict with the churches. Trying to control religion, arresting priests.
Really disturbing stuff, especially for someone with Oster's background.
Even if he wasn't devout, it's still unsettling.
But the real turning point, the moment that really solidified his opposition, I think, was the Night of the Long Knives.
Summer 1934, brutal. Really shows the internal power struggles even within the Nazi Party.
Yeah, the SS just wipes out all these SA members.
The SA, the paramilitary wing, yeah, including Ernst Röhm, their leader.
And it wasn't just them, right? They killed some of Hitler's political rivals, too.
Kurt von Schleicher, former chancellor, and Ferdinand von Bredow.
Von Bredow, the former head of the Abwehr and, like, a friend of
A
Oster's.
personal connection must have been a huge shock.
Totally. A betrayal just shows how ruthless the regime was.
Our source says the Night of the Long Knives really hardened Oster's resolve.
To take them down, yeah.
And then, in 1935, under Wilhelm Canaris, the new head of the Abwehr, he starts building this network.
A network of what?
Anti-Nazi contacts.
Yeah.
Within the state, the administration, the security organizations, all over.
Wow, so he's working against them from within their own structure.
A risky strategy, but he had the position to do it.
Right, using his role, his connections.
And then, 1938, the Blomberg-Frisch affair. This seems to have really pushed Oster over the edge.
The Blomberg-Frisch affair, what was that about?
So the Nazis, they wanted more control over the army, right? It was a power grab.
Okay, so how does this affair play into that?
Well, the defense minister, Werner von Blomberg, he marries this woman with, let's say, a colorful past.
Ah, scandal.
The Nazis use it to force him out, early 1938.
They just wanted him gone.
And then, almost simultaneously, Werner von Frisch, the commander-in-chief of the army, he gets accused of homosexuality.
A fake accusation.
Completely fabricated. Another way to remove someone Hitler didn't trust.
He was clearing the way for himself.
Exactly. Canaris and some other officers, they were furious about this, and they actually managed to prove Frisch was innocent.
So it backfired a little.
But the damage was done. Blomberg and Frisch were out, and Hitler takes over as Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces.
So he's got all the power now, military and political.
Consolidation complete. And it's during this time that Oster meets with Colonel General Ludwig Beck.
Beck, the chief of the general staff.
Right. And this meeting, it's the beginning of the first real military conspiracy against Hitler.
So what sets this conspiracy in motion?
Well, Beck, he was dead set against war with the West over Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland.
He saw the danger.
He voices his concerns, and Hitler forces him to resign in August 1938.
Wow, just like that.
Beck was highly respected, so this was a big deal. He gets replaced by Franz Halder.
And Halder, was he on board with the resistance?
Halder secretly keeps contact with Beck and Oster, and he hates Hitler too, privately calling him the incarnation of evil.
So they've got Halder, but what's the plan?
Okay, so Oster and the others, they're terrified of another war.
Germany's not ready.
They push Halder and Beck to act, to overthrow Hitler.
A coup?
A full-blown coup.
Here.
The plan is audacious: storm the Reich Chancellery, arrest or kill Hitler.
Wow.
And then they want to restore the monarchy, bring back Prince Wilhelm of Prussia.
That's a huge change, but could they really pull it off?
There were big obstacles. The top generals, they weren't convinced. They needed more support from the officer corps.
They needed a trigger, something to make it seem necessary.
Right. They figured that would come if Hitler made a clear move towards war.
So they're waiting for the right moment.
Halder tells Oster to drop the coup plans, and he'll give the order when Hitler makes that move.
And Oster's position in the Abwehr, that must have been critical here.
Absolutely. It was their cover, their access to resources. They could move around. Nobody suspected them.
Perfect camouflage.
They could forge documents, gather intel, connect with different resistance groups.
A real hub of activity.
Even more, they used Abwehr resources to send people to Britain to try and get them to stand up to Hitler.
During the Sudetenland crisis.
That's right. They thought if Britain was strong, it might deter Hitler or even trigger the coup internally.
It was a long shot.
But then came the Munich Agreement, September 1938.
Chamberlain, Daladier, they just gave Czechoslovakia to Hitler.
It was seen as a huge win for Hitler back in Germany.
And the coup, that was off the table now, right?
Completely. Our source even says Hitler was being hailed as the greatest statesman of all time after Munich.
Wow, talk about a setback.
Devastating for the resistance. And despite Chamberlain saying peace for our time, less than a year later, war breaks out.
September 1939, Germany invades Poland.
And now it's even riskier to oppose Hitler. You could be accused of treason, sabotage.
But Oster, he doesn't stop.
Nope. Even after France falls in 1940, he's still at it. He starts sharing intel with Bert Sass.
Sass, the Dutch military attaché in Berlin.
Right. He warns him about the invasion of the Netherlands, even calls Hitler the pig in one message.
That's bold.
He was risking everything, but he had to do something.
Sadly, the Dutch government didn't believe the warnings.
They thought it was a bluff, and they paid the price.
The invasion was quick, brutal.
1940 to 1942. That was a dark time for the resistance. Hitler's popularity was high. It seemed like nothing could stop him.
Like, what was the point? Right.
But Oster, he never gives up. He starts rebuilding his network, making new connections.
And then comes the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, and the Holocaust begins.
The systematic extermination of the Jews, this is a turning point for many.
Including Oster.
He connects with Henning von Trescow's resistance group in Army Group Center.
So the resistance is growing again.
And in 1943, they try to assassinate Hitler. Oster's network helps get British bombs for the attempts.
And by this time, Oster's a general major.
Major General, promoted in late 1942.
But those assassination attempts, they all fail.
March 1943, a bomb on Hitler's plane doesn't go off. April 1943, Rudolf von Gersdorf tries to do it in a museum in Berlin.
So close, but no cigar.
Bad luck, technical problems. Hitler escapes each time.
And then the Gestapo starts sniffing around.
They arrest Hans von Donny, who was working with the Abwehr.
What was Donani doing?
Well, he had actually smuggled 14 Jews to Switzerland, disguised as Abwehr agents.
Wow, that's incredibly brave.
But the Gestapo, they were initially investigating him for currency violations.
Yeah, something else entirely.
But when they arrest him, Oster tries to hide some documents, incriminating stuff. It backfires, he gets put under house arrest, and then dismissed from the Abwehr in April 1943.
A huge blow to the resistance.
It really disrupts their operations.
Yeah.
But the desire to remove Hitler, it doesn't go away.
Others pick up the mantle.
Klaus von Stauffenberg, for example. After Stalingrad, he's convinced Hitler has to go.
And that leads to the 20 July plot in 1944.
Stauffenberg plants a bomb in Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair.
But it doesn't kill him?
No, Hitler survives. And the coup attempt, Operation Valkyrie, it falls apart.
And the aftermath? That was brutal.
Mass arrests, executions, anyone suspected is targeted.
The Nazi grip tightens even further.
The oath of allegiance gets changed. Soldiers now swear directly to Hitler.
So where's Oster in all of this?
He gets arrested the day after the failed plot.
So he's in prison.
But then, in April 1945, they find Canaris's diaries.
Canaris, the former head of the Abwehr.
The diaries expose the whole resistance network, all the names, the plot.
And Hitler finds out.
He's furious, orders the execution of everyone involved, past and present.
Including Oster.
It's the endgame now, just weeks before the war ends.
April 9th, 1945, Flossenbürg concentration camp.
Oster is executed, age 57.
And it wasn't a clean death, was it?
No, Hitler specifically ordered a cruel method. Hang naked with a meat hook and a thin rope.
They called it piano wire.
Designed to make it slow, agonizing, could take 20 minutes.
Horrific.
After the war, he's buried in Dresden.
And his legacy, I mean, he's remembered as a hero, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fabian von Schlabrendorf, another resistance member, he said Oster was a man such as God meant men to be.
Lucid and serene of mind, imperturbable in danger.
High praise.
He definitely stood up for what he believed in, no matter the cost.
So for our listeners, Oster's story, it really shows the power of conscience, the choices people faced under totalitarianism.
He goes from supporting the Nazis to fighting them, risking everything.
It highlights the internal conflicts, the danger of resistance.
And it makes you think about those bigger historical forces, but also the individual choices.
Studying people like Oster, it gives us a deeper understanding of history, the complexities.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, there's always the possibility of resistance.
That human spirit, that desire for freedom, it can't be completely extinguished.
And one last thing to think about. Oster started out supporting the Nazis, right? And then he completely changed.
What caused that shift?
What were those turning points?
Beyond the big events, what personal things might have changed his mind?
It's a question worth pondering.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a journey.